Hello, I'm Chuck DeVetter, and Pastor Chuck DeVetter, and I want to talk to you today about how do we get to the next place. There's a place that it seems like in the church we're very good, especially the charismatic church, we're very good at meeting and connecting with God and the Spirit collectively. And we're very good at ushering in the Spirit a lot of times and different things like that, which is intensely important. But the impact that we've had on the world is not anywhere near what God wants to do. Not because we're failing, it's just there's a time and place and He's grabbing our heart bigger and bigger. So what I'm saying is that God wants us to be able to get to that next place, and every person in the kingdom being able to walk out their call, walk out their destiny, walk out what they were created for. Now, one of the things that happens is, especially in the charismatic church, okay, what happens is we end up in a place a lot of times where what we do is we say, well, I'm going to wait on the Lord. I'm going to wait on the Lord. And so, and that's a good thing, and we want to listen to the Lord. But the problem that we have right now is that we just don't have the capacity to hear God every second and every moment. And so if I'm going to wait for God to lead me and I'm not hearing Him, or I'm in the flesh or something like that, then it gets pretty confusing. And so what happens is that if I look at what God does and how God releases us into our call and our destiny, one of the things that's necessary is structure. The very thing that maybe we came out of, that we said, okay, no, I'm going to walk in the Spirit. I'm not going to be under any rules or laws or structures. Well, I'm going to tell you that God is a God of structure. Not by the law, but by the Spirit. And so what happens is that if I can begin to live a lifestyle and use the structures of God to get to where I'm going, eventually it's going to crucify my flesh and get me to my call and my destiny. Well, how does that look? Well, let me first start by saying that what happens if we don't use structures, what ends up happening is we end up in a place where all kinds of things are going on in our life, and our flesh ends up leading us around. Someone else's flesh ends up leading us around. The fires go off, and all of a sudden, we're constantly being led by the world and our flesh and other people's flesh, and instead of the Spirit. And so we need structure to be able to cling to the direction that God wants us to go. Now, other people have heard me in the past talk about the fact that we don't need to hear from God to know that He wants us to walk and be in that deep, intimate place with Him, and to spend lots of intimacy with Him, both corporately and individually. We don't need to hear from God to know that He wants us to be able to know His language, to be able to communicate with Him, both through visions and dreams and thoughts and impressions, and all that takes practice. It takes time to learn the language of God. Now, we really aren't learning it because it's our natural language, and we've been walking in this flesh man that has blocked out the language of God. But we need to learn that. We don't have to hear from God to know that we need to learn it. We don't have to hear from God to know that He wants to crucify His flesh. His war is against our flesh. He is at enmity with our flesh. As a matter of fact, if we look at it, we know that we are overcoming the world, the devil, and the flesh. But the truth of the matter is, if we crucify the flesh, the devil and the world have no place in us. And so there's that place of crucifying the flesh. How do we crucify the flesh? If I'm following other people's flesh, I'm following my flesh, when the fires go off and all that kind of stuff, and my priorities are mixed up as far as walking and moving towards the kingdom, what ends up happening is my flesh just gets bigger and bigger. So what I need to do is I need to begin to create a structure in my life, a plan. It says in Habakkuk, put your plans in writing. All right? Well, we're going to say that in this particular case that we come up with a plan. What should I do with my time? How should I structure my time? All right, now think about this. Think about, now I do daily sessions almost every day during the week, and sometimes in weekends I'm doing sessions with people, and God's releasing healing. And I've done that for, 10, 12 years. And what happens is that, let's think about it. If I was just going to say, okay, I'm going to wait till God sends the person, and I'm going to listen to God and be at the right place at the right time, and they're going to show up at the right time, and I'm not going to have a schedule. Well, that wouldn't work. We just aren't mature enough to be able to do that. And if the person is mature enough to get there, then they probably don't need any sessions anyhow. So what happens is we need to begin to come up with a plan or a schedule or a structure. All right? And so as we do that, what we're doing is we're saying we're placing the kingdom and God's plan for us in a priority position. Let's take intimacy, for example. Let's say that all of a sudden I'm in a place where Jesus, help me. Jesus, I'm just in a place where I'm spending lots and lots of intimate time with God, okay? Well, that's what he wants, okay? All right? But what happens if my mind's racing and all of a sudden, I don't have time, and then I never get that time? Well, somehow I have to have a plan. I have to have a structure. And I remember when I was spending time with God and I had the racing thoughts and all that time, especially really early on, what happens is I would just say, you're my first fruits, you're my first fruits, you're my first fruits. And I would stay in there and hang in there, and I'd stay in that place until I got to that deep, intimate place with him. And so what we need to do is we need to come up with a plan, and we need to stick to that plan, and we need to make it a priority so that the kingdom comes forth, so that we have that deep, intimate relationship, so that we walk in the Spirit. And so what that means is that how much time, like I've had people put together calendars each week, how much time am I going to spend in intimacy each day? Now, we aren't under the law. All right. So if something has to shift and the Lord's in it, then we shift. But for the most part, we're making him our first fruits. And to be honest with you, God's not our first fruits. He's all the fruit. But we can't even make him all the fruit unless we make him our first fruit. So there's that intimate place of disappearing into him and spending that intimate time with him. Okay. And so then that corporate intimacy. We schedule that. We come up with a plan, and we stick to that plan. Then we also schedule the time that we're going to release the kingdom and practice releasing the kingdom and practice learning the language of God. I went down to the Francis house and other places, and I just said, could I pray for you? Could I pray for you? Could I pray for you? And I just listened, and thousands of times praying for him, I learned more and more on how to hear his voice and how to be able to walk with him, and the difference between the flesh talking to my mind and the Spirit talking. He's dividing the mind and the spirit. All right, so what happens is that, so we need to set a structure. The other thing is we schedule crucifying our flesh too, if we can. An example is if I was someone that just didn't want to talk and was afraid to talk, and I knew that I had a call or a destiny, in regards to that, what I would end up doing is I'd schedule times to step through my flesh and talk, either in groups or whatever it would take as he would build me step by step by step. But so what I'm advocating now is even us, the charismatic church, all right, needs to build a structure. We need to have a plan. We need to be able to walk in that plan and let that plan bring us forth to bringing the kingdom forth. Now, once I get to a deeper and deeper place in that structure that I just described, okay, what happens is then he starts building structures for me or showing me, okay, all right, you need to schedule this time for ministry and all these different things. And so he starts building a structure for me. The reason that we need to have a structure is because because the kingdom continuously goes forth because we have things planned and scheduled, okay? Now, we're flexible and we can move with him in different things, and that's great. And some people say, I'm going to follow the Lord here and there and everywhere, and that's okay, and there's a season for that even. But what I'm saying to you is there's a time, if I set up a structure and I let him fill in the blanks and I work with him within the structure and he creates a schedule for me, then the kingdom can consistently go forth. And instead of waiting for something to drop from the sky or waiting for maybe this person to show up, then I'm really limiting what God can do and what he's going to do. And so I feel like we're in a season of building structures and plans as God gives them to us and releasing them through schedules and different things like that so that the kingdom can come forth. Thank you.